we'd love to hear. We have Pam from Prairieville, Louisiana.
Oh, that's okay. He's already eaten this meat.
And we're going to mute people.
Pam, I just moved from New Orleans to Iowa. What a small world. So happy to have you on the call.
And how long ago was that? When did you make your move?
In August. It was right after that last big hurricane. I'm
Oh.
originally from the Midwest. It turns out I don't have the stomach for coastal Louisiana.
For the hurricanes?
For the hurricane, I just don't, I can't. I'm not as, people born and raised down there, they're brave. I don't have that tolerance.
Yes. It's a whole different world for sure. Although tornadoes out here aren't exactly.
No.
There's a siren. Yeah. They're early. Ah, Pam grew up in Kansas. Oh, fun. 40 years.
Wow, 40 years.
Sayer, yeah. She's comfortable. All right, we have a few more people coming in. So we'll kind of let them roll in here. So welcome to everyone who just came in. You can feel free to share where you're watching from. We'd love to see. And we are going to get started. So today is our Sustainable Fabric webinar, Sustainable Fabrics, the Basics. And with us is Rachel Burke, and she's an education coordinator from Green Iowa AmeriCorps. Before we get started on her presentation, oh, Kathy's from Everett. Hey, Kathy. So I'm from Paulsville originally. So now we are the Iowa Quilt Museum, and we are located in Winterset, Iowa, which is about 30 minutes south of Des Moines. And we are on the historical square right downtown in Winterset. We are an exhibit only museum. So we have about 4 exhibits a year. We change them regularly. And we have a new one up right now. It's called Midwest Modern. And it's curated by Heather Kenyon. And it features Midwest quilts made by Midwest artists in the last decade. And they can range, they're kind of on the edge of modern quilts as well as what you would typically think of as a modern quilt. And you can see on Facebook, Heather just did an introduction, a Facebook Live video that you can see kind of explaining a little bit more about her process and how she chose her quilts, a little more about the definition of a modern quilt. I think we all sometimes ask that question, so it was pretty informative. The other item I wanted to bring up is we have our airing of the quilts, and it is scheduled for June 4th, which is Saturday. And then we have 3 days of pre-airing events, which include multiple classes and a quilt retreat at the historic Winterset Livery. And so if you want to check that out, you can go to our website, iowaquiltmuseum.org, and go to our events tab. And on the menu, you will see 2022 Madison County airing of the quilts. So let's get started. Rachel.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. It is wonderful to be here. I started sewing over the pandemic, and I went into this deep dive of fabric and fabric collecting. My mother gave me her sewing machine and her stash. And so this is sort of born out of that recent interest of mine. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. There is a chance that I will not know the answer, but if you want to throw your email to me in the chat privately, I can find out the answer and email it to you later. So just a heads up, all questions welcome. just excited to be here. So as Krista said, I work for Green Iowa AmeriCorps. I'm an education coordinator. My host site is actually Habitat for Humanity in Des Moines. Our mission is to empower Iowa's communities and school districts to make more environmental conservation-minded direct decisions and improvements by engaging our AmeriCorps members in direct service work, environmental education, professional development opportunities, and volunteer engagement. So the first fabric that I want to talk about is polyester. Polyester, they make 57 million metric tons worldwide annually. And that would include not just garments, but the bolts of polyester that you see at the fabric store, things for industrial uses like for furniture, the interiors of cars. So polyester is everywhere. I promise you, if you go through your clothing and you look at some tags, you're going to run into some polyester stuff. It's the third most commonly used form of plastic. So we are making a lot of it. I am definitely going to butcher this, but the last thing you're seeing there is the chemical compound that makes polyester. So ethylene glycol and terephthalic acid. Sorry, guys.
Good try. Good
Yeah,
try.
thank you. Thank you.
I couldn't either.
So some problems that we run into with polyester environmentally is that it's not biodegradable. So the majority of the clothing that we wear, we don't wear too long, and it ends up in landfills. It can take 200 years for a polyester garment to decompose. So that's something to think about when you're sewing with polyester, when you're purchasing polyester, because it's going to stick around. It also requires dispersed dyes. So from what I can tell, this is a pretty complicated process that requires very high heats. So it's large industrial, like methods of boiling to incredibly high degrees to get plastic, this polyester, to take on dye. And then because they're at such high degrees, people who are working in those environments are susceptible to all sorts of chemical contaminants and problems, carcinogens and things from the dyes. And then because you can't use it over and over again, it often ends up infiltrating our water systems. It also, because it's a plastic, like if you put a flame on it, that sucker will melt. So it requires a lot of water to stay cool. So like how you have sort of a coolant in your engine in your car, all of the machines that are working to make polyester are constantly being cooled by water. And so it's drinking a lot of water. Microfibers are really kind of one of the biggest issues when it comes to polyester. So 85% of the human-made material found on the shorelines are microfibers. I did not know that. That was a new one for me, which means that sea creatures and animals living along the shorelines are ingesting all of these microfibers. And then we in turn ingest those animals. So we are sort of getting our own pollutants that way, which can be really problematic for the health of not just the ecosystems, but for humans that rely on the ecosystem too. So 1,900 individual fibers can be rinsed off a single synthetic garment, and that's every wash. I don't know why it doesn't stop, but every wash will do 1,900 individual fibers. So your machine is emptying that, your washing machine is emptying that to drainage, and it is it has a potential to enter our watersheds also. The problem with that is that once it enters streams and in rivers that might have other kinds of chemical pollutants, it can bind with these polyesters and do unpredictable things and catastrophic things. So it's something to just to be aware of if you use a lot of polyester, or if you have a lot of polyester, maybe wash it a little less, or try to make sure you're repurposing all of it. There is people out there making polyester from recycled materials. I want to say it was like Johnny Depp or someone just hit the red carpet with like a suit that was made out of fabric that was made from plastic bottles. So they're finding new and creative ways to reuse our plastics to make fibers, which is really exciting and great. There's a company called Patagonia. It's a winter wear company or a sports company. And you can actually buy their fabric, or sorry, not buy their fabric, but buy their clothing. And when you're done with it, you send it back to them and they melt it down and spin it into new fibers. So there's a lot of options. If polyester is your jam, you can make it work. It's just something that to keep in mind. So the next one I want to talk about is cotton. Cotton is called the thirsty plant. It's something for me growing up. It's the fabric of our lives. It's something that's so readily available. The majority of my sewing projects, I think, have been cotton for the most part. I know the majority of quilting that happens is cotton. And so I think cotton is necessary for us to take a deep dive in. So it takes 5,283 gallons of water to grow enough cotton to make a t-shirt and one pair of jeans. And given the fact that these fields, cotton is mostly grown in humid climates. So some of that is rainfall, but as we hit droughts, that irrigation, the quantity of irrigation is going up. So that is definitely something to think about. I think, and we will be comparing that amount to some future amount, or to some amounts compared to like Tencel and linen and hemp. So conventional cotton, that's cotton that isn't organic, uses up 24% of the world's insecticides, which is almost a quarter. That's a ton of insecticides. And it uses up 11% of the world's pesticides. So us being in Iowa, we understand what that means as far as water quality for the people and the animals and the plants living around these fields. Just because it rains, we get runoff, and then all of these insecticides and pesticides are now contaminating our water sources. So a good alternative to conventional cotton is organic cotton. That can be a little tricky because it says organic cotton, but how do you know? There's an organization called GOTS, the Global Organic Textile Standard, and they do a really good job about monitoring the industries that are growing the cotton, how they're processing the cotton, how it's dyeing the cotton, and not just in terms of the environment, but also in terms of the people who are making the fabric in those factories and how it's impacting them. I'm going to do a quick little YouTube here for you.
This is
Of
Lumen,
course,
the
it's
first
gonna
device
do
for
a
hacking your
preview.
metabolism. With just
Sorry,
one
guys.
breath, Lumen tells you what you're.
Introducing the Global Organic Textile Standard. This is Peter and May. They're thoughtful people who buy organic food and ride bikes to work instead of taking the car. But what can they do to make sure their clothes are sustainable? They could raise some sheep and knit clothes themselves, or even go naked. But the Global Organic Textile Standard, or GOTS, is the realistic solution. GOTS is recognized as the gold standard for the sustainable processing of clothing and textiles made with organically grown fibers, such as organic cotton or organic wool. At least 70% organically grown fibers must be used in a GOTS certified product. While an important step in the right direction, the use of organic fibers alone is not enough. To make the items truly sustainable, GOTS has strict standards for the entire processing chain. GOTS includes a wide range of strict criteria, and Peter and May can be assured that neither they nor the workers or environment will be harmed. GOTS prohibits the use of the kinds of chemicals commonly used in textile processing that can cause cancer, birth defects, and other serious illnesses. Only low-impact chemicals are permitted to protect consumers' health. GOTS also includes stringent restrictions on wastewater treatment and requires target goals and procedures to reduce water and energy consumption. Also, social criteria based on the key norms of the International Labour Organization must be met. These include safe working conditions, no discrimination, and no child labour. It isn't just GOTS setting the standard. Regular inspections are also done by independent third-party certifiers along the entire textile supply chain. Every stage of processing, manufacturing, and wholesale must be independently certified. As a result, with GOTS, Peter and May can be confident that their clothes are produced sustainably and under decent working conditions. A public database lists all certified operators. Don't rely on self-claims. Always look for both the GOTS logo and the license number. The Global Organic Textile Standard is an independent stamp of approval that is widely recognized in major sales markets around the world.
So that goes on to sort of repeat itself, but that is a good, sorry, I'm changing my screen here. That is a good place to start when it comes to looking for organic textiles. The other one that I've seen more when you're buying fabric by the bolt is Ecotex. That's one that you'll find at your, like the majority of your fabric stores. So the best form of cotton that you can do is recycled cotton. And that is also available at most of your fabric stores. Recycled cotton is going to be a little more expensive because it requires a little more labor as far as gathering materials and repurposing them because you're deconstructing them first. But it's a great way to keep cotton out of the landfill and to really be as resourceful as possible when it comes to our cotton waste.
When I was in Washington, I don't know if they do it here, but the Goodwill where I lived would take our cotton scraps, like thread, the little snips, you know, when you're quilting. And it's amazing how many pieces like that kind of scrap that you can collect, you know. And I would get it, I'd put it all in a big garbage bag, and then you just put scraps on there. And then you take it to the Goodwill, and I think they had a factory over in the Seattle side that was making, I want to say mattresses and things with these scraps. And so I was like, I loved that. I need to see if we have something like that here in Iowa.
We should start something if they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's
Right.
amazing. I love
Yeah.
it. They do great work. So the next fabric I want to talk about is Tencel. And this one's maybe a little less widely known. Just saying the word makes my mouth water. Like this Tencel is like supple, it's silky, it feels so good against your skin. It's a lovely fabric. It was invented by the Linzing Group. It also goes by the term lyocell. Tencel lyocell is semi-synthetic textile made up of cellulosic regenerated fibers. That sounds like complete gibberish to me. So we're going to use a little chart here to help us understand it. So fibers are extracted from sustainably grown wood, and they use a closed loop system to recover the solvents used. And that way it minimizes environmental impact for us here. So this is the process of tree to fiber. They start with a forest, they turn it to wood. From there, it gets turned to pulp. And then from pulp, it gets spun into fiber. From fiber, it gets, from that yarn, the spun yarn, it will be woven into fabric. And this is the closed loop process. So now I want to go back. Sorry, guys, this is the closed loop process. So just to give you an idea, there's our wood, our pulp, dissolving, spinning. And this is what they're referring to as the closed loop right here. So they're using a solvent to dissolve that pulp into fiber. This specific solvent, the NMMO, is reusable. So every time it goes up, it comes back down here, which contributes to way less dumping and disposal of solvent and chemicals. This fabric, Tencel, it gets compared a lot to rayon and to viscose. The difference is that solvent. So rayon and viscose both use a solvent that's not part of a closed loop system, and that also has severe neurological side effects for folks working in the factories to make that. So if it causes those kinds of effects initially, I do sometimes worry a little bit about, like, it's against my skin, you know, and it's just something for us to keep in mind.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah. So the trees that they use are eucalyptus trees. They're fast growing. They require few pesticides, and they're best for a lack of soil erosion. I had to put the koala in there because who can bring up eucalyptus without koala? But that was definitely a concern of mine when I heard that they're pulling from trees, the issue with deforestation. So usually they're keeping it contained, planting and replanting fast growing trees so that it's not, we're not moving outward to harvest trees. It's more of a farm type
And grove. Gotcha.
for sure. A grove, yeah, a grove. Okay, so linen. Linen is made, these beautiful flowers are actually coming from the linen plant. And it's made from the cellulose fibers that grow inside the stalks of the plant. Here's a little drawing that can give you a sense of our stalks here. So they're not terribly wide, but this linen is really diverse in its uses. So most of the plant gets used when you're talking about linen. We use boil linseed oil in furniture fabrication, in just daily household chores, and in construction. The flax seed comes from the same plant as linen, and we can obviously consume that. The oil from those seeds also are help suspend oil paints. So they're usually the oil base to oil paints. These Williamsburg paints are the best, by the way. Those are the ones I use. So that I like linen because you can use a lot of the plant. It feels efficient and resourceful. So linen requires minimal water and pesticides. It can even grow in poor quality soil, which in Iowa, we don't know much about. We have beautiful soil here in Iowa, but as our landscape changes, it's definitely great to know that some of these plants can grow. It doesn't need to be prime growing land. It requires 20% less water than Tencel, and every part of the plant is being used, so nothing gets wasted. The really cool thing about linen is that if it's undyed, which you'll know when you buy, so on the bolt, even at Joann's, I think on the top of the bolt, it'll say raw linen or undyed linen. That is compostable. So you can make your garments and you can use your scraps, your threads, and throw that all in your compost bin, give it a couple turns and it'll decompose with your food. So it'll take a little longer, but it's something that is like a beautiful way to use up your scraps and contribute to your garden too. Linen is light and can withstand high temperatures, absorbing moisture without holding bacteria. A lot of workwear was made in linen. A lot of old prairie wear was made with linen. And in fact, a lot of these flax plants or some of these flax plants were actually native to our prairie. So that's something to think about too.
Right.
Something to reflect the things our ancestors wore.
Yeah.
So this one's my favorite, hemp. And it's not something I knew much about until recently. So this is what we're going to call marijuana's sober cousin. I promise you, in no way can you get high off of this hemp plant.
I'm going to tell you, we were looking into hemp and there are some crazy laws if you try to grow hemp. Like,
yeah,
please, just a little side note for all of us here in Iowa, like it was like $750 an acre you had to pay if you grew hemp, and it was just crazy.
have you heard of Winona Laduke? You know, so she is an air and water activist, and she's an economist too. And she's an Ojibwe woman. She is on a reservation north of like Duluth, way up there, northern Minnesota. And she has a hemp farm. And I think I think she's growing it on a reservation. So those laws might be a little different. But she had talked about part of the reason that hemp is so expensive, because if you've tried to go and buy hemp fabric, it is pricey. It is like $30 for like a half yard pricey. It is really expensive. And part of that is because of all the shipping costs and that it takes to get our hemp here versus growing it here. But I'm hoping as the marijuana laws change that we'll be able to grow hemp, because there's a lot of really beneficial things revolving around hemp.
Especially since it's a sober plant.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So compared to cotton, so cotton required 5,283 gallons of water for a t-shirt and a pair of jeans. For the same amount of fiber, it's less than 1 gallon of water when it comes to hemp. So it's a major water saver. The other thing is hemp is a CO2 guzzler. So not only is it saving us water, but it's taking CO2 out of the air. So it absorbs between 7 to 13 tons of CO2 per 100 acres of cultivation. Forests of the same size absorb less than that, depending on the trees, the kinds of trees that are there, but it's usually around 5 tons of CO2. So it can make a massive impact on our climate and sustainability here. It's also very strong. It's 3 times the tensile strength of cotton, mold, and UV resistant. So it's ideal for workwear. It's ideal for summer wear, and it lasts a long time. So
how does it feel?
I think it's stiff. So it starts out really stiff, like maybe like a heavyweight cotton, like maybe a heavier weight cotton, but it softens as you wear it. So it'll start out with structure and then get looser and not looser, a little more supple as you wash and time goes on.
Oh, interesting.
But it doesn't stretch a lot too, which I think is great and would be really good for quilters. I know that stretch is bad, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want stretch.
We don't want stretch. The other thing that's great is that it produces healthier soil instead of stripping the soil of nutrients. So you don't really need the pesticides. You don't really need the fertilizers. It builds healthy soil as it grows. So the stalks grow up and it's heavy leaf coverage. Before you harvest the stalks, the leaves dry and fall before then. So at the time that you pull the stalks, the ground already has a nice fertile layer of decaying leaves that are nurturing the soil as you're harvesting. So that's basically what I just said. But it's also not very prone to disease. And you can keep it in a crop rotation like we do here with our corn and beans. And it will maintain the nutrient-dense soil and stay bug free. All right. So I'm not sure how I feel like I very quickly went through that. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, so I went through it.
Very informative.
There's one more thing that we can do. I know for me as a sewer, as a maker, like it's important for me to make things to be happy and to be a productive human being. So if you have to buy polyester, you have to buy polyester, like no judgment, I want to make sure that people know that. But if it is something that is bothering you and you really want to take some actions, there are some things that you can do. So you can look for the organic certification when you're shopping for clothing or shopping for fabric. And you can buy, the recycled cotton. So that's one thing you can do. The next thing you can do is, and my favorite is secondhand fabric. So especially if you're looking for something like a fat quarter, you can get that out of a lot of garments that you would find at a thrift store. And you could probably get it quite a bit cheaper than you could off the bolt of fabric at your local fabric store. The other place that I've been looking that I will sometimes have luck is eBay and Craigslist. Sometimes, sewers decide they're giving up the whole thing and they're just getting rid of their stash. It's another one to look at is Poshmark. I should have put that on there, but Poshmark too has some fabric. But there's all sorts of creative, new and inventive ways to source your fabric without purchasing new fabric. Another pro tip would be dead stock. So there seems to be a lot of dead stock retailers. I think that popped up during the pandemic, I think as maybe, small businesses. So that's definitely a good option. Something that I didn't talk about much was the dyeing process. The dyeing process is really, no matter what fabric you're looking at, is it's not good. So a lot of our dyes end up in our waterways. They end up poisoning communities, people working for the industries who are making these dyes and dyeing the actual fabric, as well as poisoning like us when we're wearing them too. So they can be irritants for people. You can dye your own fabric. I would love, Carissa, I would love to host maybe like a natural dye, maybe during your event.
Oh, well, we will, yeah. So, right.
Sorry, let me pitch that to you in front of a whole bunch of people.
Right. No, it's funny because we were just talking, Heather Kenyon was here, our curator for Midwest Modern, and we were just talking about this yesterday because I can't remember her name. It's Kim, and I can't remember her last name right now, but she made Barn Remnant, which is the quilt that you'll see on our Facebook page. It's like a modern, it looks like a barn and it's blue and white, and she dyes her fabric. And Heather was just telling me about her because I had let out that I would love to have like a flower garden, a dye garden. Mm-hmm. And she was saying that's what Kim does. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so neat. And then I was like, oh, she needs to do a class. And then, but since you do it, that is great too. So we can throw this out at our, it's where we would do it is probably the biggest question.
Yep.
To our committee. But another artist in our exhibit is Heidi Parks, and she does a lot of dyeing through food scraps also. So yeah, we're seeing it a lot in the quilting world. I don't know if anyone on here has ever dabbled in this, but it'd be great, if you have, if you want to share that with us. But and then I'm going to take you on a little tangent because Robert has asked, what about animal-based fibers, wool, alpaca, which for our yarn.
Right. And I love wool. I love cashmere. I mean, who doesn't? This stuff is good. The trouble when it comes to sustainability of any animal-based products is that it's not just coming off of the animal that we're thinking about. It's also the water that it takes to grow the grain to feed the animal, the water that the animal consumes in their lifetime, the space of the land that they consume in their lifetime, the release of methane that they produce in their lifetime. So it didn't make the list. Not to say you shouldn't use it. I still use it. I still love it. But it isn't that easy to keep sustainable. The thing that I do really like about wool is there seems to be like a lot of small farms going about it in sustainable ways. So I would keep your eye out for looking for these small fiber farms that are going to be in the line of where your ethics line up for the environmental impact.
And here in Winterset, we have a fantastic yarn store. And I've heard that many of the fiber providers do get their yarn from the local, the smaller farms. And we have an alpaca farm here called Rusty Alpacas. And I know that they use their alpaca wool and have yarn created and they sell it in their gift shops. So we do have a lot of the smaller farms going and, doing that. It's like the multi-use factor, if the animal has multiple uses, I feel like there's a lot of value there. Whether it's meat at some point and it's the protector of your other animals, or if it's, but it's also providing wool. Alpacas have the best, their manure is like the best fertilizer you can use for your garden. So if anybody I want alpacas. They've got wool and compost. So it's perfect, So yeah, there's multiple uses for the animals out there.
If you're also concerned about animal rights, because some of the large producers of wool have sort of a checkered history with that, your local farm is going to be way better on the scale to that. They take care of their animals and they're going to care a lot more about their quality of life. And
exactly. I
and
know
you'll see it in the quality of fabric too, really.
Yeah, it'll be a better quality. Carol has said she reclaims cashmere suiting fabric and wool from thrift stores and has quite a collection. Nothing beats wool for warmth. I'm with you on that. And I think it's my favorite fabric to sew with when it comes to fashion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love wool. I own a lot of wool, but I do feel like I do buy most of it from the thrift store. Even sometimes it doesn't fit and I'm like, I gotta have this. Like, I can't believe I can have this much wool fabric for, $4. It just feels like being a gold mine. Silk is funny that way too, with its environmental impact, because it essentially is also coming from an animal. That one, I kind of thought about including it because it's such a strange fabric, but it's one that has a long and beautiful cultural history, but has quite a checkered history as far as environmental impact.
Which one? Which fabric?
Silk.
I thought that's what you said. Okay. Yeah. That could be its own webinar. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Silk was a lot.
Well, do we have any other questions from the audience, or if we had a dye class, like a class using natural dyes at our airing of the quilts, so it'd be June 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, would that be of interest? If you can say so now, or you can just email me, because I know I've been seeing that a lot from our artists that are in our gallery and just within the quilt world. Yeah.
I love the idea of doing like your garden and then your food scraps, the separate of it. I just did a podcast with Seed Savers.
Oh,
Wonder if they'd be interested in
selling seeds.
Yeah, recommending some seeds to
Yeah.
some folks for dyeing purposes.
The plants to grow, because great idea. Yeah, I think flax, isn't flax one that you can, I don't know. I feel like flax has so many uses, but
Yeah, I don't know about flax. The one that struck me was the goldenrod, just because I'm so allergic to it, and it makes these beautiful yellow and mustard colored dyes, and I just am like, oh, I got to do it.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Forget it. I'll be sneezing the whole way home, but that's fine.
Yeah. I'm saying an online Zoom class. Ooh.
Ooh.
We'd have to have multiple video like, someone taping.
I think that would be good.
Figure that one out. What was I going to ask? Oh, and if anyone else, anyone on here, if you know of ways to recycle quilt scraps, like have you, like I was mentioning, Goodwill out on the West Coast took garbage sacks of scraps from us and used it to make other things. Is there anything like that here in Iowa that anybody knows about? One of our guilds did a dye workshop years ago, indigo and more, including sun crunch. Check with your local guilds. Yeah. Oh, guilds are great. A lot of good things going on there. So let's see. All right.
I've seen lots of small sewing patterns to use up, small bags, or the reusable wrapping paper. To scrap together your scraps. And but I love the idea of even having thread, because it's after my serger, it's just
yes, a lot of leftover thread, and they took the thread too. But when you're doing flying geese or something, you have the corners that you have to clip off, and there's little tiny scraps, and or when you're cutting out your pieces and you end up with just like the 1/8 inch piece of straight fabric, and so it's kind of fun. And yes, you can create your own fabric from scraps. I know someone who does that, and then she uses the AccuQuilt. She doesn't throw anything away, and she uses the AccuQuilt to cut out pieces, and then makes she did a wedding ring. It was like a modern take on one, and I can't remember what it was called, the pattern, but anyway, she did the rings out of fabric that she made out of scraps.
Wow.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Scrappy quilts. Super miniature quilt makers. And then stuffing dog beds. That's another one. A lot of people use dog scraps to stuff with dog beds.
Or to make yourself an ironing ham. I've made a couple sewing tools with scraps.
Did you? Okay.
Things like that.
And Lindsay, there's someone in Iowa City that collects quilt scraps to make dog beds.
Nice. Perfect.
Well, that's good to know. I might have to start doing that again. Embellishment with threads and snips of scraps. Fabric snips on cards. That's a good one.
That is a good one. Gosh, I'm sorry I went so quick through that.
We're having a conversation here. I almost felt like but so many people use, I like that too. Sharing your scraps with other sewists. And I think that's huge when you get that a lot when you're in a guild. We had what was called a free table. And so people would bring what they weren't using, and it would all be gone by the end of the meeting. I mean, what you don't, they always say someone else's trash is someone's trash is someone else's treasure. And it's true in the quilting world also.
Yeah.
And then some people would come and say, I got this at the free table, and show us what they made with it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, like a scrap swap.
Yeah.
A scrap swap meet.
That would be fun. Yeah, and great for donation quilts, exactly. Especially the big pieces for the backs. And that's what the estate sells, or even Goodwill. I've gone to Goodwill. I have gotten some fantastic fabric at Goodwill from quilting. I haven't done that. Yeah. I've heard of it.
I have found some, fabric by the yard at Goodwill, mostly in Iowa. And it must be because of the quilt culture here.
Yeah.
I had a hard time finding it by the yard in other cities in other states, but I've definitely found some good things.
Yeah. And if you can find a lot, I mean, backing is so expensive that,
Even I made my wool coat this year was made out of an old army blanket from the DAB.
Oh, wow.
So you can get, like, if you get a big wool blanket, that's a lot of yards of wool fabric. That's quite a money saver and an environmental perk.
Yeah. Yeah. Pre-pandemic. Yeah. Used to get them at the church sales. That's it. Yep. Church sales typically have fabric. That's funny. Yeah.
Well, maybe those will be coming back.
I think so. Yeah. Yep. And garage sales, and yeah. We'll see a lot of that. But so I guess do we have any other questions or thoughts that we want to share? What did you learn? Maybe what was your biggest takeaway from Rachel's presentation? I learned a lot about linen. I love linen. We talked about this before, except for that it wrinkles so much, but I love how light it is. I don't like shorts, and so I love to wear linen pants in the summertime. And I didn't realize that so much of the flax plant was usable for other things. I obviously know there's flax seed, but you don't put it all together.
Yeah. I mean, flax and linen aren't the same word either.
No,
that's also it takes knowing that.
Yeah. So, and what was hemp? Well, I already knew hemp was a fantastic plant, but
yeah, we really need some hemp. And Winona Laduke, I got to tell you guys, Winona Laduke is on. She's on it. Like, she's ready to go. She has a group. I mean, her community, her Ojibwe community, is really invested in that hemp farm. And I saw a talk that she did not long ago, and she had said that she felt like this was really the beginning of something for the United States, and that it's going to be great because Indigenous women are going to be at the forefront of it. And I think it's going to be I'm really excited about hemp. I think it's going to be a really beautiful experience for Indigenous folks if it continues to be an opportunity. And I think that,
about his food late night and in the afternoon sometimes.
What did she do? So yes, love linen. Thought it was made from cotton. Yeah, right. There is a collective that takes fabric from manufacturers that sell at low prices. Vancouver, British Columbia has a couple of businesses. Vancouver, British Columbia has some amazing, they used to, I'm assuming they still do, but fashion fabric stores.
okay.
Being mindful of how things we use are made is great. Yeah. Lindsay, sorry. Thanks for the.
I enjoyed it. It, Lindsay, honestly.
All right.
I'm not sure. I also noticed a lot of the places I buy fabric from are actually Canadian. So like Blackbird Fabrics, I adore. What's the other one that's up there?
The one that starts with an L. Do you know that one?
No.
Can't remember her. She's
It probably is that one. But there's a couple that I feel like they're really smart about the way they go about purchasing fabric and sourcing their things.
Oh, okay. The presentation is recorded and we will have that recording up. It takes me a couple of days, so maybe Thursday, Friday, but we will send the link to everybody who registered. As long as you're not unsubscribed from our emails, you will receive the link. Yeah. So, do you have anything else, Rachel?
Only gratitude that you guys gave me your time today to listen to me talk about fabric. It makes me feel so good to feel a part of a sewing community that cares about where their fabric comes from and is interested about its history. So I appreciate you guys having me, and
Of course.
I hope I can't wait to jump on the next call. And,
yeah, well, and welcome to the sewing world.
Thanks.
Sounds like you just started in the pandemic. So
yeah. Took
Good
off
thing.
running. Learned a lot of hard lessons really quick, the way you do.
Yes.
You
You have to
bite
do
off
it
more
to
than you
learn,
can
so.
chew.
Yep. We all make mistakes. Even those who've been doing it for 40 years.
Oh,
We all do. Put the sleeves on backwards, or
yeah.
flip our pattern pieces on the quilt. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We will. We don't have anything else scheduled for webinars, and because we are geared up for airing of the quilts, we may bring them back in the summertime, but we know people are out and about in summer, so it might be until fall when we get back onto our online content. So if you ever have any ideas, feel free to shoot them to me and we will consider them. All right, everyone, have a good one. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks.